The price of truth. Neria's world flickered between darkness and awareness. Her body ached from the rough landing, and the taste of dust filled her mouth. A faint glow pulsed in her hands, the strange device she had stolen, the reason she had been hunted. A groan beside her. Oren. She turned her head, wincing as pain shot through her limbs. He was sprawled on the cavern floor, breathing but unconscious. They had survived. For now. Above them, distant voices echoed. The raiders were searching. Neria forced herself upright, pressing a hand to her pounding skull. The cavern was deep, but not endless. If the raiders found the entrance, they were trapped. She had to move. Had to figure out what this device really was before it was too late. She shook Oren gently. Come on, wake up. He stirred with a pained grunt, eyes fluttering open. Did we die? Not yet, she muttered. Oren sat up slowly, taking in their surroundings. Well. That was reckless. You told me to jump. Yeah. Remind me to rethink my life choices. Secrets revealed. The glow from the device pulsed brighter. Neria frowned, running her fingers along its smooth surface. It felt warm, almost alive. She had seen this before. Not just in scattered memories. But in visions. Dreams. Somewhere deep in her past, this device had been part of her. A whisper filled the air, not from the cave, but from inside her own mind. Neria. She stiffened. The voice was familiar, yet distant. You are the key. Her breath hitched. The images flooded back. A hidden facility. Scientists. An experiment. Not a weapon. A message. This device held something ancient, something meant to be delivered across the stars. And she was the one meant to carry it. She staggered back, her heart racing. I know what it is. Oren eyed her warily. Care to share with the class? She met his gaze. This isn't just something they want. She exhaled shakily. It's something they're afraid of. The final stand. A distant explosion shook the cavern. The raiders were getting closer. Oren rose to his feet, hand on his weapon. We need a plan. Neria gripped the device. We can't let them have this. Oren studied her. Then we run? She shook her head. No. We end this. His lips quirked into a smirk. That's what I was hoping you'd say. They moved fast, navigating the narrow tunnels until they emerged onto a higher ridge overlooking the raider camp. The raiders were regrouping below, scanning the cliffs for any sign of them. Neria's fingers tightened around the device. You are the key. A surge of energy pulsed through her veins. Without thinking, she raised the device high. The glow intensified, spreading across the ridge in waves of shimmering light. The raiders froze. Then the scream started. Neria watched in shock as the energy seeped into their weapons, their armor, their ships, overloading circuits, frying power sources. Panic erupted in their ranks. Then silence. Oren let out a low whistle. Remind me never to make you mad. Neria stared at the device in her hands, her breath unsteady. She wasn't just carrying a message. She was the message. A new path. The raiders fled, their forces broken. The battle was over, but the weight of truth settled heavily on Neria's shoulders. She had power, power she barely understood. Oren placed a hand on her shoulder. So. What now? She looked toward the horizon. For the first time, she wasn't running from the past. She was running toward the future. And whatever lay ahead, she was ready. The end. The escape and the bounty. The cold night air of the barren moon was thick with tension. The bounty hunters moved quickly, their dark armor glinting under the dim starlight. They were well trained, moving in tight formations, scanning the landscape with precision. They weren't just looking for survivors. They were hunting. And they were getting closer. Ronan pulled Queen Liara behind a jagged rock formation, pressing his back against the stone. Her breathing was shallow, but her grip on his arm was firm. Despite her injuries, she was still aware, still calculating. "We're outnumbered," he whispered. Liara's violet eyes flickered with understanding. "They won't stop until they have me." Ronan exhaled sharply. "Then we make sure they don't." The hunters close in. The ground trembled slightly as the bounty hunter's ship landed nearby. A metal ramp extended, and a towering figure stepped out. His armor was blackened steel, his face hidden behind a scarred helmet. "Captain Durnex," Liara murmured. "One of the most ruthless bounty hunters in the sector." Ronan peeked over the rocks, watching Durnex survey the terrain. His voice, amplified by his helmet, was cold and mechanical. "Search the wreckage. The Queen is here. Alive." The bounty hunters spread out, scanning every crevice, their rifles humming with energy. Ronan tightened his grip on his blaster. "We need a way out." Liara nodded toward a ridge in the distance. "There's a transport beacon there. If we can reach it, I can send a distress signal." Ronan cursed under his breath. "That's a lot of open ground." "Then we don't go through it," she said. "We go under." He followed her gaze to a narrow passage leading into a network of caves beneath the surface. It was a risk. If they got cornered, there would be no escape. But they didn't have a choice. Underground survival. Ronan led the way, blaster in hand. The cave walls were damp, glowing faintly with bioluminescent fungi. The air was stale, filled with the scent of minerals and damp rock. Behind him, Liara moved with silent determination, despite her injuries. "You've done this before," he said. She let out a short breath. "Escaping death? More times than I care to count." Ronan smirked. "Royal life doesn't sound so glamorous. Not when your throne is stolen." There was a sharp edge to her voice. Ronan glanced at her, but she kept moving, her expression unreadable. Ahead, the tunnel split into two paths. Ronan stopped, listening carefully. Then, a noise. Footsteps. They weren't alone. Ambushed. Ronan barely had time to react before a bounty hunter stepped out from the shadows, rifle raised. "End of the line," the hunter snarled. Ronan didn't hesitate. He fired first. The blast struck the hunter's chest, sending him sprawling backward. The echoes of the shot rang through the tunnels. "Now they know where we are," Liara said. "Then we run," Ronan replied. They sprinted through the tunnels, the sound of pursuing footsteps growing louder behind them. The bounty hunters were closing in. Liara stumbled, her injuries slowing her down. Ronan caught her before she fell. "Go," she said through gritted teeth. "Not happening," he shot back. Ahead, a shaft of light appeared, a way out. They pushed forward, emerging onto the open ridge. But standing between them and the beacon, was Captain Durnex. A dangerous deal. Durnex's visor glowed red as he leveled his weapon at them. "You made this difficult, Queen," he said. Liara straightened, regaining her composure. "I don't bow to mercenaries." Durnex chuckled darkly. "You will when I deliver you to those who paid for your capture." Ronan subtly adjusted his grip on his blaster. "I'm guessing you don't take bribes." Durnex's head tilted slightly. "Depends on the offer." Ronan glanced at Liara. "I assume you're worth a small fortune." "A galactic fortune," she corrected. Durnex seemed amused. "A tempting thought." But dead queens don't negotiate. He fired. Ronan barely had time to shove Liara out of the way as the energy blast scorched the ground where she had stood. They had seconds to act. Get to the beacon. Ronan shouted. Liara sprinted, activating the distress signal as Ronan opened fire on Durnex, forcing him to take cover. The beacon's signal flared into the sky. Help was coming. Durnex growled. This isn't over. Before Ronan could reply, the bounty hunter threw down a smoke grenade, disappearing into the shadows. The fight wasn't over. But for now, they had won. Allies and betrayals. The distress beacon pulsed like a star in the night sky, its signal stretching beyond the atmosphere. Liara stood tall despite the pain in her limbs, her violet eyes fixed on the flashing light. They'll come, she said, more to herself than to Ronan. Ronan reloaded his blaster, scanning the horizon for movement. Let's just hope it's the right people. They had driven off Captain Durnex, for now. But Ronan had no illusions. The bounty hunter would return, and next time, he wouldn't be so easy to escape. You said your throne was stolen, Ronan said. By who? Liara's expression darkened. My brother. A stolen throne. Prince Valor, Liara continued, was once loyal to me. We ruled together after our parents' deaths. But power changes people. Ronan frowned. He turned against you? She nodded. He struck a deal with the Syndicate, a powerful faction of warlords. In exchange for the throne, he promised them control over my people's resources. And you? Liara let out a sharp breath. I was meant to disappear. Be executed quietly, far from the public eye. Ronan ran a hand through his hair. Damn. Royal family drama always seems to end in betrayal. Liara smirked slightly. And you? What's your story, mercenary? Ronan hesitated. He didn't talk about his past. But something about Liara made him answer anyway. Former soldier, he said. Fought in too many wars. Eventually figured out that the people giving orders don't care about the ones fighting for them. So, I left. Liara studied him. And now you help exiled queens? Ronan chuckled. Not usually. Arrival of allies. A low hum vibrated through the air. The beacon had worked. A sleek, silver starship descended from the sky, its thrusters kicking up a cloud of dust. Ronan tensed, gripping his weapon. They had no idea who had received their signal. The ship landed, and the ramp extended. A figure stepped out, tall, lean, with dark copper skin and eyes that glowed faintly with an unnatural golden hue. His long coat billowed in the wind, and the insignia on his chest marked him as something Ronan recognized instantly. Pirates, Ronan muttered under his breath. Liara inhaled sharply. Not just pirates. That's Captain Oris Valrek. Ronan groaned. You know him? He once served as my fleet commander, she admitted. Valrek stopped at the edge of the ramp, arms crossed. His gaze flicked between Ronan and Liara. Then, he let out a low chuckle. You look terrible, Your Highness, he said. Liara smirked. You look exactly the same, Valrek. A deal with a pirate. Ronan didn't trust pirates. He had dealt with enough of them to know their loyalty was measured in credits. Valrek, however, didn't immediately name his price. Instead, he led them aboard his ship, the Void Serpent, a well-worn but powerful vessel. You sent a distress signal, Valrek said as he settled into the captain's chair. Which means you need something. I need to reclaim my throne, Liara said. Valrek whistled. Ambitious. Ronan folded his arms. We need a way off this rock first. Bounty hunters are crawling all over it. Valrek smirked. I assume you mean Durnex? He's been a pain in my ass for years. We've crossed paths before. Liara leaned forward. Can you get us to my people? Valrek considered her request. I could. But why should I? Ronan narrowed his eyes. Because you owe her. Valrek laughed. I don't owe anyone. You do, Liara said, voice firm. When you deserted my fleet, I let you go. I could have had you executed. Instead, I let you take your ship and your crew. You owe me this. For the first time, Valrek's smirk faded. The silence stretched. Then, finally, Valrek sighed. Fine. But we do this my way. And it won't be free. Liara nodded. Name your price. Valrek leaned back. I want a seat at the table when you take back your throne. Liara's expression didn't change. Done. Ronan wasn't sure he liked the deal. But they didn't have another option. A betrayal in the dark. The void serpent lifted off, breaking through the atmosphere. Ronan allowed himself a breath of relief. But it didn't last long. Alarms blared suddenly. Valrek's second-in-command, a short, wiry woman named Senna, appeared on the bridge. Captain, we've got incoming. Who? Valrek demanded. Senna's face was grim. Not bounty hunters. Something worse. The screen flickered to life, revealing a massive battleship approaching. Ronan's stomach twisted. That's a royal vessel. Liara's fists clenched. Valor. The ship's comms crackled. A voice filled the bridge, smooth, arrogant, familiar. Dear sister, Prince Valor's voice purred. I was wondering when you'd show yourself again. Liara's face darkened. Damn it. They had walked into a trap. And now, there was no turning back. The weight of a crown. The void serpent trembled under the weight of an incoming tractor beam. Red emergency lights flickered through the bridge, alarms screaming as Prince Valor's warship loomed closer. Ronan's grip tightened around his blaster. He had been in tight situations before, but this? This was worse than anything he had imagined when he agreed to help Liara. Valrek's jaw tensed as he slammed his fist against the console. They're pulling us in. We won't have time to break free. Liara's violet eyes burned with fury. I refuse to be taken back in chains. Ronan exchanged a glance with her. Then we fight. Valrek's crew scrambled into action, but the void serpent was outgunned and outmatched. The ship jolted as the tractor beam fully engaged, dragging them toward the warship's hangar bay. Brace for boarding, Valrek growled. The moment the ship touched down inside the massive enemy hangar, the boarding ramp began to hiss open. The fight for survival had begun. A desperate battle. The first wave of enemy soldiers stormed in, royal guards clad in black and gold, wielding energy lances. Ronan shot first. Blaster fire erupted in the confined space of the void serpent's loading bay. Liara fought beside him, her movements swift and lethal. She seized a fallen enemy's weapon, wielding it with the grace of a warrior queen. Valrek's crew held their own, but the numbers were against them. Then, from the far end of the hangar, a new figure stepped through the smoke. Prince Valor. Dressed in ceremonial black, a wicked smirk played on his lips. How far you've fallen, dear sister, he mused, his voice carrying through the battle. Liara didn't hesitate, she lunged at him. Valor sidestepped, blocking her strike with an ease that sent a chill through Ronan. The prince was toying with her. Ronan moved to intervene, but more guards cut off his path. This isn't your fight, mercenary, Valor said, eyes flicking to Ronan. Walk away, and I may even let you live. Ronan fired a shot directly at him. Valor barely dodged. Wrong choice. He raised his hand. A surge of energy burst from his palm, striking Ronan square in the chest. The world spun as Ronan was thrown back, slamming into a crate. Pain exploded through his ribs. Everything blurred. The last thing he saw was Valor gripping Liara's throat. Then, darkness. Imprisoned. Ronan woke to the cold bite of metal cuffs around his wrists. He was in a cell. The walls were dark, humming with restrained energy. Across from him, Liara sat against the wall, bruises on her face but her spirit unbroken. "Welcome back," she muttered. Ronan tested the cuffs. "Where are we?" "On Valor's ship. In his private holding cells." She exhaled sharply. Valrek's crew was either captured or scattered. He might still be out there. Ronan's head pounded. And Valor? Liara's lips curled in disgust. "He plans to execute me. Publicly. As a traitor." Ronan let out a bitter chuckle. "And me?" Liara tilted her head. "He didn't say. But given how much he hates humans, I wouldn't hold my breath." Footsteps echoed down the corridor. Valor appeared outside their cell, arms folded. "Sister," he said smoothly. "Still stubborn, I see." Liara glared at him. "And you?" Valor turned his gaze to Ronan, the human who thinks himself a warrior. He smirked. "How amusing." Ronan clenched his fists. Valor sighed dramatically. "You've both caused me quite the inconvenience. And now, you will pay for it." The prince tapped a control panel, and the door slid open. Guards entered, seizing Liara first. Ronan lunged, but a rifle butt struck his stomach, forcing him back. Liara's gaze locked onto his. "Don't give up," she whispered. Then she was dragged away. Valor smirked. "She will be executed at dawn." Then, he turned to Ronan. "And you? You will watch. A pirate's return." Hours passed. Ronan sat in the dimly lit cell, frustration burning through his veins. Liara was going to die. And he was trapped. Then, something strange happened. The lights flickered. A deep boom reverberated through the ship. The guards outside the cell stiffened, murmuring into their comms. Then, suddenly, the sound of blaster fire filled the hall. An explosion rocked the prison block, sending debris and smoke through the air. The cell door hissed open. Through the smoke, a figure emerged, grinning wildly. "Valrek. Miss me?" he asked. Ronan grinned despite himself. "Took you long enough." Valrek tossed him a blaster. "No time for sarcasm. Let's go save your queen." Storming the execution. The palace balcony was filled with onlookers. Noble elites. Syndicate warlords. Soldiers. They had all come to witness Liara's death. She was forced to her knees at the center of the platform, Valor standing beside her with a ceremonial blade in hand. "This traitor," Valor's voice rang out, "will serve as an example to all who oppose my reign." Liara lifted her chin. "I am still your queen." Valor's grip on the blade tightened. Before he could strike, a shot rang out. Chaos erupted. Ronan and Valrek burst onto the scene, blasters firing. Smoke bombs exploded, shrouding the balcony in darkness. Liara seized the moment. She twisted free from her captors, striking one guard with a stolen dagger. Valor snarled. "Kill them." Ronan reached her side, cutting her restraints. "You good?" he asked. Liara smirked. "Better than ever." They turned to face Valor. "End this," Ronan said. Liara stepped forward. "Gladly." Valor lunged. The siblings clashed, metal against metal, their battle raging at the edge of the balcony. Sparks flew as their weapons met. Liara fought with renewed fury, her every strike fueled by years of betrayal. Valor faltered. And then, with a final, decisive move, Liara drove her blade into his chest. Valor's eyes widened. He stumbled back, gasping. "You." He choked. Liara met his gaze. "You lost." With one last breath, Valor collapsed. The war was over. Or so they thought. Because the syndicate warlords watching from the shadows? They had other plans. A queen's reckoning. The silence after Valor's fall was short-lived. Syndicate warlords stood on the balcony's edges, their expressions unreadable. Some looked pleased, others wary. But the moment was fragile, one wrong move, and Liara's victory could be snatched away. Ronan stood at her side, blaster raised, waiting for the inevitable. Valrek muttered under his breath, "This ain't over." He was right. One of the warlords, an older alien with deep-set crimson eyes, stepped forward. His voice was like grinding metal. "Valor was weak. But what makes you think you can rule in his place, exile?" Liara lifted her chin. "Because I was never weak." She tossed Valor's ceremonial blade to the ground. The metal rang out, a sharp sound against the balcony's cold stone. "I have no interest in playing his games," she said, her voice carrying over the crowd. "But if you stand against me, I will not hesitate to strike you down, as I did him." The warlords exchanged looks. Then one of them laughed. A hulking brute with deep violet skin and gold-plated armor stepped forward. "Perhaps a fresh start is exactly what we need. Valor led us to ruin. Maybe the queen of old will do better." Another warlord nodded. One by one, others followed. Some still looked unsure, but they remained silent. For now, Liara had won. But her throne came at a cost. The weight of a crown. The palace was hers now. But victory did not feel like relief. Ronan stood with her in the war chamber, watching as the remnants of Valor's rule were torn down. His banners burned, his advisors imprisoned. Liara sat at the head of the war table. Valrek leaned back in his chair. "So what now, Your Highness?" Liara exhaled. "I rebuild." "You sure that's what you want?" Ronan asked. "You fought so hard to escape this life. Now you're back in the center of it." Liara looked at him, something unreadable in her expression. "I was running before because I thought I had lost everything. Now, I have something to fight for again." Ronan nodded slowly. He understood. Even if part of him wondered what it meant for them. Liara's gaze didn't waver. "But I don't intend to do this alone." She turned to Valrek. "Your crew helped save me. I want you as my admiral." Valrek snorted. "Me? Working for royalty? Now that's a twist." But there was a glint of approval in his eyes. Then Liara turned to Ronan. "I know you never wanted to be part of this war," she said. "But I want you here. With me." Ronan's heartbeat quickened. The war was over. But his fight wasn't. Not yet. He met her gaze. "Wherever you go, I go." Liara's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. "Then let's get to work. A new beginning." The stars stretched endlessly beyond the palace's high tower. Ronan stood beside Liara, watching as the remnants of Valor's fleet were dismantled. "Do you think they'll accept you?" he asked. Liara tilted her head. "In time. And if they don't?" Liara smirked. "Then they'll regret it." Ronan chuckled. He liked that answer. As the night deepened, he turned to her. "So, Your Highness, what's your first order as queen?" Liara leaned in slightly, amusement dancing in her eyes. "Don't call me that." Ronan grinned. Maybe, just maybe, this was a future worth fighting for. The end.